Russia has just discovered 50 billion barrels of oil beneath an African nation that the world never imagined would hold a drop. But what exactly is Russia doing here? In which country was this oil found? And how could it change everything for Africa? Let us discover. In the heart of the Sahel, where cracked earth stretches endlessly under a scorching sun, no one expected to find oil. Burkina Faso was not supposed to be that kind of place. No legends of gushing wells, no offshore platforms, no powerful oil dynasties. The country was known for its cotton, not its oil. Yet in early 2025, under thick layers of sand and silence, a secret was unearthed. A reserve so vast that it overturned all assumptions about that nation. For decades, the major international companies had completely ignored Burkina Faso. ExxonMobil, Shell, and TotalEnergies focused on fields already established in Nigeria, Angola, and Algeria. Burkina Faso was judged too dry, too risky, too remote from any port to justify exploration. Geopolitical instability frightened investors, and yet, beneath their very noses, an oil empire lay buried. No official announcements were made at first, as everything was handled quietly underground. The soil, rocks, and drilling rigs witnessed this revelation. How did Gazprom discover what no one was seeking? The answer leads back to Moscow, not to Burkina Faso. As sanctions tightened around Russia, the Kremlin launched a discreet campaign to expand its global footprint, not with tanks, but with drills, engineers, and equipment. Africa became the new frontier, and energy the chosen weapon. Backed by state support and political incentives, Gazprom explored regions others had abandoned. For Russia, Burkina Faso was perfect. Distant from the West, its government rejected IMF conditions, and it was desperate for alternatives. Ibrahim Traoré's military regime welcomed the Russians not only as allies, but as partners in a renewed national vision. Gazprom geologists mapped the country's north in 2023, using cutting-edge seismic imaging and in-depth satellite surveys. Where Western firms saw barren land, Russian teams detected anomalies, hydrocarbon pockets buried beneath millennia-old geological layers. They drilled in secret, without press coverage, generating only dust, data, and boreholes. Then, in early 2025, the results arrived. These were no mere tests, but a colossal discovery: 50 billion barrels of crude oil. No grand announcement or diplomatic fanfare accompanied the confirmation. Instead, scientists and engineers quietly verified the find, analyzing core samples and reservoir estimates. Confidential briefings in Ouagadougou and Moscow set extraction plans in motion, with Gazprom securing exclusive rights under discrete agreements. This hidden partnership would soon reshape the region's geopolitical landscape. This discovery was not only colossal in volume, it also surprised the world with its quality. Initial assessments indicated light, sweet crude oil that could be easily refined into gasoline and commanded high value on global markets. Scientists speculate that during the late Paleozoic and Mesozoic eras, this part of West Africa was once a vast inland sea, rich in organic matter, protected from oxygen, an ideal environment for oil formation over millions of years. The relative absence of seismic activity preserved these reservoirs as a geological time capsule. But why had no one discovered them before? Quite simply, no one had really looked, and the few who had tried lacked the deep scanning technology employed by Gazprom. Western companies dismissed Burkina Faso based on outdated data and the logistical nightmare of a landlocked country. Installing pipelines, roads, and refineries would have required massive investment. For Gazprom, though, these were challenges to be met with long-term commitment backed by Russia's geopolitical ambitions. With official confirmation and extraction and development plans already underway, the implications are staggering. This single reserve could generate over $3 trillion in long-term revenue at current prices, even accounting for infrastructure costs, corruption risks, and market fluctuations, placing it among the most valuable oil discoveries of the 21st century. Yet what truly makes this story unpredictable is that it is not managed by a Western consortium or IMF-linked entities. It is orchestrated by a sanctioned power allied with a military regime that tore up the old colonial playbook to write its own. In a world where energy equates to influence, this discovery does more than fuel engines. It reshapes power dynamics and weakens Western dominance in the region. Yet despite its magnitude, oil has yet to flow. Burkinabe leaders pledge that this wealth will neither be stolen nor sold to the highest bidder. They insist this oil will build cities, not just bank balances. However, such promises have been made before, in Venezuela, Angola, and Iraq. The real question is not how this oil was found, but who will control its extraction and distribution. When news of the 50 billion barrels spread, Western embassies did not ask, "Is this real?" But who will manage this windfall? The answer did not come from a press release, but from a silent political shift. France was sidelined. Russia moved in. To understand this change, one must leave the oil fields and enter the halls of power. In Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso was once a loyal French ally, the cornerstone of what Paris considered its backyard. French troops were stationed there. French companies dominated banking, telecoms, and infrastructure, and Parisian diplomats had direct presidential access. Everything seemed immutable, until French influence began to feel like control rather than protection. Officially, there were no grand announcements. Behind closed doors, Russian diplomats negotiated quietly, expanding their footprint while French envoys lost influence. The stage was set for a geopolitical transformation with Burkina Faso at its center. Beneath the surface, French military interventions, first Operation Serval, then Barkhane, were deemed ineffective against persistent Islamist violence and rampant corruption. In 2022, Captain Ibrahim Traoré overthrew the civilian government in a coup that was both symbolic and strategic, a clear break with everything France represented. Traoré did not merely burn bridges, he built new ones. Within months, unofficial security agreements were struck with Moscow, private military contractors, informal envoys, and ultimately, the reopening of the Russian embassy in late 2023, a diplomatic move unseen in over 3 decades. Russian instructors arrived covertly, not in uniformed convoys, but under the guise of cooperation missions. Local forces received training, equipment, and strategic support. Russian language programs were established in elite military academies. Behind the scenes, Gazprom negotiated exclusive exploration rights in the country's north. By the time oil was confirmed, Russia had already gained foothold. Why did Traoré trust Moscow? Not for ideological reasons, but pragmatic ones. Where the West saw a coup, the Kremlin saw a steadfast ally. Sanctioned and isolated in energy markets, Russia needed new resource frontiers. Burkina Faso, desperate for options, sought a partner without colonial baggage. Among urban Burkinabe, the Russian alliance was sold as a blank slate. New friends, new terms, without Western paternalism. With the discovery confirmed, a new challenge emerged: how to exploit this wealth and who would receive the first share. Traoré made it clear that he did not see oil as an end in itself, but as a springboard. He drew inspiration from the Dubai model, transforming a fishing village into a global empire of glass skyscrapers, free zones, and technology parks powered by oil. In Ouagadougou, echoes of this vision now resonate. 3 industrial corridors have already been planned, one north to Mali, one east to Niger, and one south to Ghana. Each corridor will include refineries, planned urban zones, railway infrastructure, and educational hubs. Solar-powered industrial parks will be integrated throughout to diversify the economy. The objective is to refine domestically and export finished petroleum products, gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel, not only to neighboring countries but across the continent. External analysts ridicule this plan, citing political instability. Yet Burkina Faso's leadership bets on surprise. The IMF debt model is rejected. If the West won't finance development, Burkina Faso will finance itself with its own oil. Behind the scenes, the country renegotiated mining contracts, created state-owned enterprises, and established a development bank to support local industry. Digital systems for tracking oil revenues were deployed to fight corruption. Transparency platforms will allow citizens to monitor investments and fund allocation. If this plan succeeds, Burkina Faso will not only be an oil producer, but a regional hub for commerce and industrial transformation. The stakes are enormous, the model fragile, but the vision is clear: return every drop of wealth beneath the feet back to the people. External pressures, diplomatic sabotage, and internal tensions will not deter Traoré. For him, this is no longer politics, but dignity and legacy. A nation once treated as a pawn by global powers now takes charge of its destiny. Nevertheless, despite the vision's clarity, major challenges remain: securing infrastructure against armed groups, attracting investment without sacrificing sovereignty, and training a local workforce capable of managing refineries and advanced technologies. Convincing rural populations, often skeptical that oil revenues will truly benefit their communities is another hurdle. Despite these uncertainties, Traoré presses on. He launched technical education programs, forged partnerships with African universities, and invested in training engineers and technicians. Specialized schools opened in Ouagadougou, Bobo Dioulasso, and Dori. The administrative apparatus was modernized. A digital portal centralizes production, revenue, and transparency data. Early results are encouraging, but much remains to be done. Beyond oil, Traoré is spearheading a comprehensive reform: agricultural development, renewal of road and rail infrastructure, and promotion of renewable energy. Pilot irrigated farming projects leverage cheap oil-derived power to improve food security. New rail lines will link industrial zones to regional markets, reducing transportation costs. Politically, Traoré champions inclusive governance, strengthened local councils, mixed citizen oversight committees, and participatory budgeting to decide investment priorities. This approach aims to prevent corruption and boost state legitimacy. On the international stage, Burkina Faso positions itself as an emerging energy player. A free trade agreement was signed with ECOWAS, and cooperation accords were concluded with Morocco, Egypt, and India. Trade delegations travel the world, presenting the Burkinabe project as an alternative African development model. So will Traoré step back? How long will it take for Burkina Faso to become what it envisions? Can an external power halt this momentum? To follow the evolution of this epic journey, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and stay tuned for the next video.